美国国家航空航天局 NASA 前往国际空间站 ISS 的 SpaceX Crew-6 任务的发射准备审查已经完成了。那么该任务呢已经被授予发射的许可。那计划是于美国东部时间周一凌晨1点45分，也就是北京时间今天下午2点45分，从佛罗里达州肯尼迪航天中心的39A 发射场发射。在佛
You can see the Crew-6 astronauts have taken their seats inside the Tesla Model X's. They'll be joined on this caravan out to Pad 39A by security forces from the Kennedy
宇
Space
航
Center.
局宇航员安德烈·费迪亚夫进行25个小时的空
Commander
间
Stephen
战
Bowen
之。
and pilot Woody Hoburg took their seats
那么
in
成
the
员组呢
Tesla
是
on the
将于
right
美国
in
东
the
部时
front
间
of
2月28日
this
星期二
caravan
凌
and
晨
the Tesla
2
behind
点
them.
38分左右停靠空间站，在微重力
Sultan
实验室
Alneyadi
上
and
停
Russian
留
cosmonaut
将长达6
Andrey
个月，进行
Fedyaev
科学和维护
are。in their seats as well.
那现在我们看到的这个画面就是发射前的准备工作。
Right now,
booting them up.
exactly. Yep.
我们看到右上角有一个倒计时的标志，
So
就
this point, kind of the
是
last
距离
chance,
发射时间
family
的
and
一个
friends,
倒计时的标
loved
志。
ones coming up to the windows to kind of be able to talk to their astronaut before they head off to the pad.
Now the family has been in quarantine as well, right?
Exactly. Yep. And so it depends on. There's different levels of quarantine depending on if, when people traveled. But yes, there's full quarantine,
Oh,
and
look
then
at the high five.
and then you see another UAE astronaut there. One of the astronaut candidates, Nora, on the other side, standing next to Hazaz, who just walked off to the left.
我们现在看到的这个宇航员呢，是在
And
这
you
个
can
车里，
see Administrator Nelson is there.
是准备
his
将
back
前
toward
往
us in the
发
seat.
射的
And
现
see
场。
Victor Glover is the astronaut talking to Steve Bowen, and then just over Victor's right shoulder.
Core on
is,
countdown.
Administrator
Advanced
Nelson.
complete. Ready for crew arrival.
And then Pam Melroy, the Deputy NASA Minister, and right next to him. So
Good eye on all those, Raja. And we also saw some family comforting each other.
Yep.
You
never know what kind of emotion might come out.
Yeah, it's exciting.
现在我们看到这个现场有2辆车啊，车里面就是有这次发射任务的宇航员，那么他们将前往这个发射现场。
Awesome time. You're so proud that we've gotten to this point, and they've gotten to this point. But also, as with everything, also just concern. But I think just one of the things that I think my family really appreciated was just how much support they got from the team around.
我们看这个车牌号上面显示的也是一个 Crew-6 的这样的一个标志。
Safety concerns for us is paramount, and they do amazing work on these vehicles and getting us ready to fly. And
Absolutely.
off the launch pad.
And there we go, pulling out of the operations and control. I'm sorry, the operations and checkout center. 3 Teslas.
现在我们看到这个车辆呢，正在驶往佛罗里达州的一个肯尼迪航天中心的39A 发射场。
This is an upgrade. We didn't have this.
We enjoy seeing that view. We also have a helicopter high above that will be tracking them along the way. This is a night launch, so a lot of things will be in the dark. But one of the things about the night launch is that you get to see that lit up crew access arm, and you can see the astronauts as they go across, come out on the launch tower. It's neat to see.
Yep, there's a view of the helicopter you can see going left to right at the top of the screen as it flies over. More than likely on the wet dress a few days prior, probably all these Teslas also have an additional sticker on the windshield. So my guess is the crew, we call zapped it with their patch sticker, branding it forever.
And, really quick about the Teslas, you notice they were black, and SpaceX basically saying they're expanding their fleet of vehicles. More launches. We've got private, launches as well. And so they said that they expanded and added some cars to the fleet, and they're black ones. The ones that we've used from Demo 2 all the way up to Crew 5 were white.
That's a good point. Yeah. So a new set of windshields to brand.
据美国宇航局称呢，最新的 SpaceX 载人任务呢，其实已经是推迟了一天。那该任务呢，正式称为 Crew-6。它原计划呢是在2月26日星期日将这4名宇航员送往国际空间站的。但是现在呢 ，NASA 和 SpaceX 已经将这个 Crew-6 的发射时间推迟到了美国东部时间2月27日星期一凌晨1点45分，也就是北京时间今天下午2点45分。
They delivered an integrated cargo carrier and a Russian mini research module. He has logged more than 40 days in space, including 47 hours and 18 minutes in 7 spacewalks. And today, Raja, he is the position that you held during Crew 3. He's the commander.
Yeah, he is, yeah, and Steve is a great guy for it. Like you mentioned, he's the first submarine officer, but not the last in the astronaut corps. He has definitely got some experience, and as you mentioned, a lot of EVA experience. And then Steve also helped with the commercial crew program before Demo 2, actually. So he has some experience with Dragon and with the Boeing Starliner, which hopefully we'll be launching this spring. So he's got some experience on wide-body vehicles. Also did some Soyuz training as a backup flow, and so he's very familiar with the Russian side, the Russian vehicles. So yeah, all around, just a great person to be in that commander role, which is really kind of like the coach of the team, really.
How about that?
现在我们看到的这个车队呢，是载着这个4名宇航员前往美国佛罗里达州肯尼迪航天中心的39A 发射场。
One of the astronauts had an injury.
Right. Yeah. So and it's a good thing and a bad thing, right? You're definitely exciting, but also a pretty rushed training flow, and you have to be really on your game to do that.
Sitting next to Stephen is pilot Warren Woody Hoburg. A 37-year-old is from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
看到这个右上角的这个倒计时的时钟，那显示呢，距离发射还有3个小时09分。
During grad school, Hoburg worked as an EMT with the Yosemite Search and Rescue. Crew-6 will be Hoburg's first flight since NASA selected him to be an astronaut in 2017. A turtle, which we have another turtle here. He is also a commercial pilot with instrument, single engine, and multi-engine ratings. As pilot for Crew-6, he will be responsible for spacecraft systems and performance. Aboard the station, he will serve as an Expedition 68 and 69 flight engineer. You know him well as a fellow turtle.
I do, yeah, and proud to keep the turtle tradition in space alive. Obviously, I'm super excited all of Crew-6, but I'm especially excited with Woody going up as a classmate of mine. So I've come to know and respect him well. The academic backgrounds don't really do it justice. I would say he's probably like 2 or 3 orders of magnitude smarter than any of the rest of us in our class. But you would never know it the way he carries himself. He's totally humble, just an amazing human, and can't wait to watch Woody launch to space with Crew-6 today.
And you mentioned he was also teaching at MIT.
He was, yeah. Didn't just go there, actually taught, yeah.
It's amazing. Well, in the role of mission specialist is astronaut Sultan Alneyadi. He was chosen by the Mohammed bin Rashid Space Center of the United Arab Emirates to be part of Expeditions 68-69. The father of 5 spent most of his life in Al Ain and Abu Dhabi. But in 2020, he traded that in for astronaut training in Houston at NASA's Johnson Space Center. This will be his first trip to space and our first partnership with the UAE.
Yeah, Daryl, and we are super excited about this. So it is. So Sultan and Hazza both trained in Russia for a while, and then came over to the U.S. Unfortunately, they showed up right as the pandemic was starting, so they had to deal with being the first UAE astronauts to train. Oh, by the way, in the midst of COVID, and so the fact that they persevered and through all that challenge, I'm so excited to see Sultan going up there today. And like you said, just starting the beginnings of a new partnership with the UAE, and now in the new class we have 2 additional UAE astronauts training with us, fully integrated with us at Johnson Space Center. So this is the start of a huge relationship.
And many launches to come in that partnership. It's also the first trip to space for the second mission specialist, Roscosmos cosmonaut Andrey Fedyaev. Andrey was selected as a cosmonaut back in 2012. He will be working to monitor the spacecraft during the dynamic launch and re-entry phases of flight. And once aboard station, he will be a flight engineer for Expeditions 68 and 69.
Yeah, and Andrey, great to see that's the first-time flyer. So much like our mission, one commander with experience, someone with experience, and then 3 rookies. So very much a testament to the training on both the Roscosmos and JSC side and the NASA side of being able to send that many rookies on one flight. Just the confidence and trust we have in our training teams and our systems.
And oh, by the way, today is Andrei's 42nd birthday.
Oh,
so
well,
he's
happy
gonna
birthday!
Get quite the candle lit for his day.
The best birthday present you could get.
No doubt.
And they must be getting close because the helicopter's coming by the press stand.
That's right. You can hear it overhead.
我们现在看到的这个车队呢，就是搭载了这个即将发射升空的4名宇航员，前往美国的佛罗里达州肯尼迪航天中心的39A 发射场。
We rolled out the Artemis 1 mission, the Space Launch System and Orion spacecraft out of that building right there for a successful launch around the moon. And your fellow turtle, Caleb Barron, was here.
Yeah,
you were here as well. Oh, no,
I was not
here.
I watched TV. And then that building just to the right of the VAB, the more horizontal-looking one, is the firing room. So that's actually where the KSC personnel are watching and monitoring from.
Well, you can see as they're passing there's some folks waving and wishing them good luck on the road. You mentioned the Launch Control Center. That's where Firing Room 4 is, and SpaceX has got their launch team. But just to the right of this caravan here is the turn basin. Can't see the water, but it's a large body of water. That's where we bring in big hardware, like the core stage for SLS. And it's also where several weeks ago, Raja, NASA's recovery team was in the water training to return NASA astronauts after a flight back from the moon. Let's take a look now at more in our Artemis update. Right now, NASA scientists and engineers are preparing for Artemis 2. The mission will send 4 astronauts on a trip around the moon in 2024. But before that happens, test crews are practicing how to recover astronauts from the Orion spacecraft after splashing down in the Pacific Ocean. This black full-scale replica capsule, named Vader, stands for Vehicle Advanced Demonstrator for Emergency Rescue. It spent the last couple of weeks in the turn basin here at the Kennedy Space Center, where it was floated on the water and tested. Crews practiced opening the hatch and installing an inflatable porch, an important piece of equipment to make sure astronauts can be recovered safely. If needed, adjustments will be made, and then it will be shipped to San Diego, where NASA and the Navy can perform recovery tests in the Pacific Ocean. Some key technology there, Raja. You want to be able to get out of that Orion spacecraft and not fall in the water.
Exactly. Yeah, so especially when you're coming back from space and being deconditioned, your balance is off, your muscles aren't quite work the same. So we spend, it's not quite as easy as getting out of a boat when you're in good shape. So we have to spend a lot of time trying to figure out and how do you simulate that? How do you make the right, restraints and tools for the crew to get out quickly if they have to, and to do it safely. It'd be even worse if someone falls and slips. Now a bad situation's gotten even worse. And so we do a very similar thing for the Dragon training, the combination of training at the NBL, which is the Neutral Buoyancy Lab at Johnson Space Center, and then also out here at Kennedy in that basin.
Great point about the condition of the astronauts, especially since being on Orion. That's tight quarters going around the moon. Want to mention really quickly, if you want to see more Artemis updates and track them as we go along the way, please see the QR code right now to the right of your screen. You can scan that. That'll take you to our Artemis blog, where you can catch up with all the latest updates on Artemis. And now we resume our focus on Crew-6 and the caravan that's taking them out to Launch Complex 39A. One quick note I do want to mention, Raja, before we totally wrap Artemis is, in a few months, we're going to have the announcement for the crew of Artemis 2.
Yeah, so it's going to be everyone's pretty excited to hear that. I think one of the cool things about being in our office, I think most of us, the reason we like working at our office is just the people. And so we're all excited to see who's going to be doing Artemis 2 and all ready to jump in and support them. It's going to be amazing as they suss out and figure out the training flow. As you mentioned, we just had a greatly successful Artemis 1, and now the next step is to put people on board, check out what we call the ECLIS, or the life control system on that spacecraft, go around the moon, go further than we've ever gone as humans before, and then come back and check out the splashdown and check out all those systems before the next step of actually going to land on the moon. So it's a very exciting time, and can't wait to support the folks who are doing that. We already do support that, and the fact that most of us are working on Artemis programs, that's really our job in the office, is whether it's the lunar lander, the Orion capsule, the Gateway, Habitat, the SLS. So actually having crew assigned and working will be great.
Are your fingers crossed? And toes?
Whatever it's I'll cross them. I'd love to be part of that, but just the fact that we're all working on it is so rewarding.
Absolutely. Well, let's check in now for the first time. Head back to where you live, the Johnson Space Center in Houston, Texas, and that's where we find
the Crew-6 astronauts now passing through the gate at pad 39A, passing just next to the SpaceX hangar where the Falcon 9 rocket was integrated with the Crew Dragon spacecraft last week.
这个佛罗里达州肯尼迪航天中心39A 发射场的门口。
Together, we've ensured the station is ready to welcome Crew-6. Leading the team inside the room right now is Flight Director Mike Lammers. And about an hour before launch, Flight Director Chris Dobbins will be in the Flight Director's seat. The Flight Director here in Mission Control will lead the NASA SpaceX Go poll once we're in integrated operations with Mission Controls here in Houston and at SpaceX in Hawthorne, working together to bring Crew Dragon to its new home in space. When we check back in later, we'll talk a little bit more about what the crew on the International Space Station has been doing to prepare for Crew-6. But for now, we'll send it back to the team at Kennedy.
现在我们看到这个 SpaceX 的猎鹰9号火箭。
That live camera on the Tesla, that was really neat to see. That shot driving up and seeing a rocket dead ahead.
Yeah, that is a cool. Yeah, that's awesome. We'll see what they're seeing. And the crew got to go do this usually a day prior to go do a pad tour, but now seeing
看到这个现场，这个发射台附近有一些轨道，所以这个车队行驶的速度相对的减缓
Depending on how you mentioned there's a flight surgeon and closeout crew with them in the vehicle. The other thing they're doing is monitoring their playlist. So if everything is nominal and
现在看到这个 SpaceX 猎鹰9号的火箭是一个全新的火箭。
To curate the playlist for the crew, to try to time it such that their playlist is working out so what the time they pull up it's finishing, and some good effort and fun goes into picking the songs they listen to on the drive out.
Yeah, you mentioned that the playlist we got them from Dan Hewitt over at Johnson. He mentioned that
看到这个宇航员待会儿呢是会乘坐这个发射台上的一个电梯，然后通过这个宇航员的一个通道进入到这个火箭当中。
Creedence Clearwater Revival, May We All by the Florida Georgia Line with Tim McGraw. The Space Traveler's Lullaby by Kamasi Washington. He's an American jazz saxophonist. Sing Me to Sleep by Alan Walker. Spaceman by Harry Nilsson. That's an American singer, popular during the 70s. You might remember Everybody's Talking at Me. I kind of think Bowen picked that one. I have a feeling.
Arrived at the pad. We remain on schedule.
All right, there's your announcement that the Corps just put out, that the crew has arrived at the pad.
Yep, and you mentioned so when they drove out, they're in two vehicles. So what we'll eventually see is they'll be in two groups because they go 2 by 2 across in the crew access arm and do this whole process. So basically we'll see Woody and Steve do something, and then a few minutes later we'll see Sultan and Andrey do the exact same thing. So they'll be sort of broken up in pairs.
And so they continue to rock out real quick with Sultan and Andrey's playlist. A Sky Full of Stars by Coldplay. Don't Stop Believin' by Journey. And Push It to the Limit by Paul Engemann, which came from the Scarface soundtrack. And boy, that's some pure 80s right there.
That's my kind of
your kind of stuff. Yeah. Crew-6 is NASA and SpaceX's sixth crew rotation to the International Space Station since 2020. This successful NASA program is called Commercial Crew, and it's based right here at the Kennedy Space Center. So now we want to turn over to Jasmine Hopkins, who is joining us live now with one of the leaders of this program. Jasmine.
Thanks so much, Daryl. We are here on the balcony of the Operations Support Building number 2 at Kennedy. It feels great tonight, and right now I'm happy to be joined by Ken Bowersox. He is the Deputy Associate Administrator for NASA's Space Operations Mission Directorate. Good evening, Ken.
Hi, Jasmine. It's great to be out here tonight.
Yeah, we're so glad to have you here. As we just heard Daryl say, this is the 6th crew rotation flight from NASA and SpaceX to the space station since 2020. What do you think of that cadence that commercial crew has achieved?
I think it's awesome. You know, we're launching every 6 months. That was the plan going in. It's been our plan for a long time. I think folks may not appreciate how hard it is, but the team has been very successful keeping up that cadence. But I look back, you know, in the early days of space station, we thought 3 months would be a long mission. And now 6 months is just normal. 1 year is longer. You know, when we go to Mars, 2-3 years is going to be normal. And this is all part of getting there.
Right, exactly. And every 6 months, you know, commercial crew is really keeping us busy right now. What can you say about the continuous presence of the United States on the space station?
Well, it's great to be up there doing science. Every day the team is doing some sort of science, keeping the space station flying. But it's given us the experience we need, again, to go to Mars. The longer we're in space, the more we learn, and that prepares us for that eventual trip away from Earth and on out into the solar system.
Right, and we're going deeper than we have before. Right now, I mean, NASA is no longer.
我们现在看到这个画面是美国佛罗里达州 NASA 肯尼迪航天中心39A 的发射
Well,
场。
we've got international partners and we've got commercial partners, and it's great to see how our commercial partners are stepping up and taking on more and more of the things that NASA used to do. And that frees up capacity for NASA to do new things, right? So we're not afraid of them coming in and doing work. We welcome it, and we're trying to actually develop the capability for.
那么再过2个多小时，美国国家航空航天局 NASA 前往国际空间站 ISS 的 SpaceX Crew-6 的发射任务即将在这里进行。
But it's all about moving.
There's a shot from the Pad 39A fixed service structure. You can see some of the SpaceX closeout crew members or so-called ninjas in black coveralls walking across the crew access arm.
Well, we've got another crew
pathway
rotation later in the year.
4 crew members will be taking in the next few minutes as they make their way into the spacecraft.
But then we've got the Starline.
2 hours and 55 minutes.
看到这个画面上的这个通道呢，就是一会儿
Falcon 9
这4名宇航员 将通过这个通道来进入到猎鹰9号国舰。
At that point, the crew members should all be strapped into their seats. The hatch will be closed, and the support team, the closeout crew, will be evacuated a safe distance from the pad. Before that propellant loading gets underway. Also, before the fueling starts, the launch escape system consists of
待会儿呢，在这个4名宇航员进入到这个猎鹰火箭当中之后呢，这些现场的工作人员都会撤离。
Those engines will be armed in case of any anomaly or problem or malfunction during the propellant loading process that would propel the capsule away from the rocket if there was such an event.
And it's a beautiful night out. We've got a nice cool breeze. Temperatures are in the upper 60s.
那么这个 SpaceX 的奋进号载人龙飞船是由该公司的一个猎鹰9号火箭来提供动力的。那么这个 SpaceX 的奋进号呢，就是将搭载着这4名来自美国、阿联酋和俄罗斯的4名宇航员，进行25小时的一个空间站之旅。 那这4名宇航员呢，是将在美国东部时间2月28日星期二，凌晨的2点38分左右呢，是停靠到空间站，在那里呢，在一个微重力的一个实验室上，将停留长达6个月，进行科学和维护。
See 2 of the astronauts set to ride to orbit tonight. It looks like this is Steve Bowen, the commander, and the pilot Woody Hoburg walking across the pad deck. they'll likely have a chance to get a look at the Falcon 9 rocket.
现在我们看到这个画面中的这2名宇航员，就是本次发射任务4名当中的2名宇航员。
They have to do that lean to see the full height of the Falcon 9 rocket. Of course, they're wearing their helmets, which obstruct some of their vision above their heads. This looks like mission specialist Sultan Alneyadi and Russian cosmonaut Andrey Fedyaev, both spaceflight rookies, will be making their first flights to space tonight, getting a look at the Falcon 9, and a fist bump there as they make their way to the elevator to ride up to the 265-foot level of that service structure. Commander Bowen, pilot Hoburg already have boarded an elevator to make their way up.
我们现在看到的是这个4名宇航员当中的另外2名。那么刚才2名宇航员已经是乘坐这个电梯，已经上去了。那么接下来这2名宇航员呢，将搭乘这个电梯，然后进入到猎鹰9号。
And there's a look from the security helicopter camera showing Commander Steve Bowen, pilot Woody Hoburg there at the 265-foot level with the NASA worm logo painted there. They have a chance here to make some final phone calls to their families before taking their seats inside the Dragon spacecraft.
那么现在这个宇航员呢，是在他们出发之前，进行一个拍照，留影。
So all 4 crew members now at the 265-foot level. And in the next few moments, we expect to see the first 2 make their way across the crew access arm.
我们看到这个4名宇航员啊，现在已经是乘坐电梯已经上来了。那么 之后呢，他们会通过这个 B 舱啊进入到这个猎鹰9号当中去。
And the first 2 crew members are now making their way across the crew access arm. On the right, Commander Steve Bowen, 59 years old, native of Massachusetts. On the left, pilot Woody Hoburg from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania area. Bowen
已经是通过了 B 舱，进入到了猎鹰9号。
4th flight to space.
准备进入猎鹰9号。那么这2名宇航员分别是美国的宇航员斯蒂芬·鲍恩和沃伦·伍迪。
40 days in space on those 3 previous missions to the International Space Station, which were mainly focused on assembly and maintenance of the space station. Now he's launching on his first long-duration flight to perform scientific research on board the space station. Bowen has accomplished 7 spacewalks for a total spacewalking time of 47 hours in his NASA career.
那么这个斯蒂芬·鲍恩呢，他已经是经历了一个7次的一个飞行，宇航飞行。
submarine officer. Now signing the NASA meatball logo in the background is pilot Woody Hoburg, 37, on his first flight to space tonight. He was selected as part of NASA's 2017 astronaut class. Before his selection as an astronaut, he was a professor and led a research unit at MIT. He has a PhD in computer science and electrical engineering from the University of California, Berkeley. They're being assisted now by the SpaceX closeout crew in their black coveralls, and they will be helped into the spacecraft shortly.
我们看到现在这个穿着黑色衣服的是 NASA 的工作人员，他们在辅助这个宇航员进行准备工作。
You saw Commander Steve Bowen there rip the name tags off of the closeout crew members' suits. That's becoming a tradition. We've seen that before, where the crew members will take the name tags of their support crew members into space as sort of a keepsake or souvenir for those people who helped them along the journey.
Core on countdown. Ingress has started. We remain on schedule.
Commander Steve Bowen is now entering the hatch and taking his seat inside the Dragon Endeavour spacecraft. He's the first crew member aboard. And pilot Woody Hoburg is about to enter the spacecraft.
猎鹰9号，他是第1名进入到这个火箭舱的宇航员。
And the other 2 crew members are now making their way across the crew access arm. Mission Specialist Sultan Alneyadi of the United Arab Emirates and Russian cosmonaut Andrey Fedyaev are now in the white room at the end of the crew access arm, preparing to board the spacecraft. Both of these crew members also are spaceflight rookies, so this 4-man crew consists of a veteran commander and 3 first-time space flyers.
我们现在看到这2名宇航员，也就是4名当中的另外2名，一名是来自阿联酋的宇航员苏尔坦·阿尔尼亚迪和俄罗斯的宇航员安德烈·
Dragon SpaceX, we were actually able to
菲
complete that test without
那么在
triggering
这
the
个
onboard alert, so
4名的宇
you
航员
can
当
ignore
中
the
呢，
previous
除
call.
了1名宇航员他是有丰富的一个飞行的经验，那么其他3名宇航员都是首次进入太空。
SpaceX Dragon, seat 3, com check.
Got you loud and clear, Woody, how me?
I have you the same. Good morning, Arthur.
Good morning, and for your awareness, as promised, I am wearing the shirt.
I love it. That makes us so happy. Car seat 1, com check.
Loud and clear, seat 1, how me?
Got you the same.
This is seat 4, com check.
Loud and clear, seat 4, how me?
Loud and clear, call. Thank you.
With all 4 crew members now inside the Dragon spacecraft on top of the Falcon 9, the closeout crew from SpaceX is
我们现在看到这个4名宇航员已经全部进入到了猎鹰9号火箭。
And ground teams, including the spacecraft communicator or core, crew operations responsible engineer at SpaceX Mission Control out in California, will be performing voice checks with each of the 4 crew members. The crew members will also conduct communications checks with the Launch Control Center here at Kennedy Space Center.
那么这4名宇航员呢，是将通过语音和地面的控制中心来进行一个沟通，做最后的一个发射准备。
calculated
exactly.
in terms of
Yep.
shifting
And
your
they
sleep
absolutely
schedule.
do. Yep. And so they actually build a whole that's built into the whole plan. And so even like at the wet dress and the lead up to this, that is all accounted for. And yeah, every as you're doing training events still, you're getting briefs on the weather, on the vehicle status, and all that is timed to make sure it is synced with whatever the sleep shift is.
And SpaceX Dragon crew is ready for comm checks.
SpaceX copies. Stand by for umbilical comm check.
All right, so they're running a little ahead, it looks like. So the crew's got giving us some waves. There's a procedure that they're running called, so SpaceX procedures are a number with a dot.
现在我们看到这个4名宇航员已经是各就各位，他们通过这个语音来和指挥中心进行沟通，做最后的准备工作。
Connection you'll hear them talking about, which is a satellite connection, and then you'll hear different people talking to them. The MD is a mission director.
Commander, pilot, MS1, MS2, comm check.
SpaceX Commander, comm check.
Commander, have you loud and clear?
And that's Arthur the Corey here talking to him.
And Commander, you loud and clear as well.
That's the crew operation.
SpaceX pilot, we had you loud and clear.
Resource engineer.
Pilot, loud and clear.
SpaceX MS1, comm check.
MS1, loud and clear.
SpaceX, this is MS2. Do you read me?
MS2, loud and clear. Umbilical comm check complete. Report when ready for seat rotation.
So there you heard the call for the seat rotation. So we're seeing the astronauts and the cosmonaut for the last time with that camera inside the spacecraft before that camera has to pull out.
And SpaceX Dragon crew is ready for seat rotation.
And those seats articulate up so they can look at that display that is at the top of the screen. That's where the action
Exactly, yeah. You'll see the seats rotate for both launch and landings.
So SpaceX copies. Dragon will report when initiating.
Yeah, so it's like this to make it easier to get
initiating seat rotation.
Make it easier to get in and out for both the people and the cargo, but then you rotate the seats for launch and landing so that the G-forces are more through your chest and not in like a more odd. You don't want to be like in a
pulling it down from your
weird.
Head,
Yeah, exactly.
The blood
it makes it
feet.
exactly. So this makes it much more easy to sustain the G's when it's pushing through your chest, kind of like someone sitting on your chest, as opposed to pulling it down towards your feet. And you can see the cargo underneath there.
There they go. Rotating, articulating, I should say, up into that flight position. They'll be able to look at their screen and monitor the systems as Dragon is prepared for flight along with the Falcon 9. Neat shot there.
Yep. So you can see it's not just people going up to the space station, a whole bunch of stuff getting hauled up there as well.
That's right.
Dragon SpaceX seats are the launch position.
我们现在看到这个画面当中的这个4名宇航员已经是各就各位，他们坐的这个舱位呢，已经是进行了一个角度的调整，来使他们之后出舱进行一个准备。
Meantime, what they're probably doing in between themselves is adjusting those Vox settings, and like I mentioned, that's the sensitivity of the mic, and so you're kind of tuning it so that you're not hearing background noise, but that you can hear each other talk.
Dragon SpaceX, you are go for Section 2 suit leak check preparation.
And we've got Section 2 suit leak check preparation in work.
So Steve mentioned Section 2, that was the procedure I was talking about before, so they're doing it on the screens. You'll see them running through the steps there. Steve's probably telling them to lower their visors, which is why they just did that. He's reviewing the steps that are in the procedure. Essentially, when they're doing this, they're going to kind of stay still and let the nitrox start to flow. It's going to pressurize the suit. You'll probably see them tuck their arms in. You'll see the suit inflate a bit. You'll probably see the helmet move up again, and that's why I mentioned before why it has to be tight so that they can still see out after this leak check, you'll see they will never touch their zippers again. The only thing they'll do is open and close the visors. But after this leak check, that's the last time they'll mess with any zippers.
Once you know they're good to go, leave them alone.
Exactly. Yep.
All right, SpaceX Dragon tear is complete. We are ready for leak checks.
T-minus 2 hours and 24 minutes until liftoff.
SpaceX copies. You are go for Section 3, suit leak check.
And we got Section 3 suit leak check in work.
So you heard Steve first mention that the tear was complete. So just like if you're weighing food when you're cooking it, you tear it like with the dish. They tear the suits to zeroize it, and then they start the leak check. So that way you've basically taken out any bias in the suit pressure meetings. And now they're just going through it. You'll know they're about to do it when you see Woody and Steve's hands come down and get still, and they'll kind of all just sit there.
You were the commander for Crew 3. What's your role in this moment?
So my analogy that I like to use is it's kind of like a professional coach of a team where you're not really, if you're an NBA coach or an NFL or Major League Baseball coach, you're not teaching people how to play. You're just trying to get them to work together in the most efficient way. And that's the same thing. Everyone in our office is highly trained. I don't need to tell anyone how to do their job. But more it's a matter of like, okay, for this emergency, Steve might say, okay, in the case of a depress, then Woody, you're doing this, Sultan, you're doing this, Andrey, you're doing that, and the important thing is iterating on that. So you have a sim, you see how that goes, and even if it went great, maybe change it the next time to see, like, oh, that either went better or it validates that we have the right approach. So it's kind of working with the training team to figure out the best, we call it CRM, or crew resource management. What is the optimum way to use the crew skills in a variety of environments? And sometimes maybe having the same approach, so having like a buddy system maybe works, but maybe there's a balance of like, do you want to keep it simple, or maybe there's a certain reason to do something like, for example, depending on how good, like my Russian wasn't really great, right? So, so if we had a Russian crew member, Tom probably would have sat next to that person. We would have figured that out, or figured out certain emergencies. So, Woody's a lot smarter than me, and Steve's been speaking Russian a lot longer, so I'm sure they didn't have that. I'm sure they didn't have that concern, but things like that. So it's just trying to figure out how to best optimize the skill set of the crew. And you can see
look like
their pressure. Yeah, you can see that's why Woody's hands look like a mummy there, just sticking out. Yeah. And you can see their knees have gotten much puffier. You can see Andrey's head, like the helmet now is, you can still see his nose and his eyes, but it's risen up. You can see how it's extended there in his neck. And that's why it's so important to be fully strapped in, because if you weren't fully strapped in the suit, you would turn in, like, you'd basically just puff up and wouldn't be able to move your arms and legs. So these are not like what we call the EMUs. These are not meant to go EVA or do spacewalks, these kind of suits. These are called IV suits, meant for in the vehicle. And as you mentioned, to protect you from a fire or a depress, but not to go outside and actually move around.
And we just heard from Johnson Space Center that we have 4 passing leak checks.
Excellent. You can see they're deflating. You can see actually the suit getting smaller on them.
Yeah, see it depressing.
SpaceX Dragon, we have nominal suit leak checks for all suits.
You'll see they pop their visors up shortly.
SpaceX copies and concurs good suit leak checks. Closeout team will now perform final closeout steps and exit capsule. Proceed to Section 4 for side hatch closure and report when ready to close side hatch. Also, stand by for ground station comm checks.
All right, we'll move on to Section 4 for side hatch closure, and we'll report when we're ready for side hatch closure.
We've been taking social questions, and we appreciate you bringing them in, and Raj has been giving us some excellent insights. We want to take another question while the closeout crew inspects the seal around the hatch. Jump on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Twitch at #AskNASA to get your question in. Our question comes from Professor Marbles.
Dragon, the crew is ready for side hatch closure.
So cool to hear about the dragonflies as a good sign. Raja mentioned that a little bit earlier, that a dragonfly, when seen inside the White Room, was a good luck sign. What other things are regarded as good luck?
Yeah, and I should caveat, that's on dry dress, because as you mentioned, it's a clean room now, yes. So seeing a dragonfly now would be bad, because that means there's bugs.
That could be fun.
Yeah, that means there's bugs inside military dress rehearsal, yes. Let's see, other things. Let me think about that. I think slapping, so Steve probably had an STS shuttle patch on the outside of the thing, so slapping your patch on the way into the AQF facility is like a thing.
我们现在看到这个身着黑色衣服的是NASA 的工作人员，他们在做最后的一个舱盖的一个检查工作。
Because then you've gotten rid of all your bad luck.
Leave the bad luck on the ground.
Exactly. The other one is you're supposed to win because then you feel good as the crew. So I don't know what the right answer is. We actually played a little mini game of shuffleboard. We kind of
shuffleboard
based on we had a little tradition when we were in training of playing little mini shuffleboard with not the shuffleboard like the huge stick shuffleboard. That's the little one. Yeah.
Okay.
So that was what actually we elected to do. And then we did do a game of war in terms of like picking who had the high card, but I honestly can't remember if I won or lost because we decided we weren't sure which it was supposed to be. So I'm not sure what Joe elected to do.
Well, whatever it was, it worked out great.
Exactly. Yeah, we should have written that down, I guess.
Well, thank you, Professor Marbles, who, by the way, is one of our social participants here at the Kennedy Space Center, with a number of NASA social participants being hosted by the Kennedy Space Center. We reach out and invite folks who are leaders in the social space to come out and visit the Kennedy Space Center for a launch. They're all here, ready to watch their launch, many of them for the first time, like you.
Yeah, exactly.
Dragon SpaceX closeout team is taking final steps in preparation to close the side hatch. Stand by for transition to pad hatch closed. Ensure all items remain secure from now through launch.
SpaceX Dragon copies.
Now we're at hatch close.
Yep, so you heard that call from the core. So there's nothing the crew's actually doing in terms of the actual hatch closing. You can see they have those more powerful lights out. They're monitoring. The key thing he told them was not. So basically, up to this point, they could be moving things out of their satchels, maybe moving their iPads around. But from this point out, you don't want to do that because if something falls off your leg, you lose a pen. Now you've got a piece of FOD in the capsule. So basically, they're no longer going to mess with anything other than the displays and their armrests. Nothing, no taking pencils out or doing like that. So they are probably doing the last bit of configuration. You saw those like kneeboard cards that they had on their legs, like making sure those are Velcroed on, that they have access to the pen or pencil they want to be able to write down notes with, and getting all that done.
So as we watch this, we're going to split the screen so we can maintain our visual of the closeout crew inspecting the hatch before they close it. But we also want to look back to a little history and a recent honor that happened for a couple of our astronauts. Today, we are launching American astronauts on American rockets from American soil, but it all began with two trailblazers of the Commercial Crew program who recently received the highest civilian honor an astronaut can achieve.
It is my great honor to award you both the Congressional Space Medal of Honor.
In January, Vice President Kamala Harris spoke to a packed room at the White House about the dedication of NASA astronauts Doug Hurley and Bob Behnken.
Bob and Doug represent the best of our nation. There's no question about it.
NASA selected both men to be astronauts for the Space Shuttle program in 2000. But when the shuttle program ended 11 years later, Doug and Bob's work did not. NASA collaborated with the private sector to build the next generation of spacecraft.
Every part of the capsule, from flight controls and emergency procedures to computer displays and cockpit layout, all of that shaped by Bob and Doug's decades of know-how.
And in May of 2020, the SpaceX Crew-Dragon was ready to soar.
Bob and Doug returned to the Kennedy Space Center. They suited up, they waved to their families, and they rode an elevator up nearly 20 stories. They strapped in to their seats and waited as the tanks beneath them filled with tens of thousands of gallons of fuel. And then 3,
was the first crewed flight for NASA's Commercial Crew program, ushering in a new era of human spaceflight. And now, the names Doug Hurley and Bob Behnken have been added to an elite list. Prior to this ceremony, the Congressional Space Medal of Honor had only been given to 28 people, astronauts like Neil Armstrong and John Glenn.
We're following in their footsteps, and so it's just an incredible honor.
It was humbling to be a part of the mission. We got to be the smiling faces on the pointy end of a rocket ship.
Because of their bravery, missions like Crew-6 are happening today.
Bob and Doug together have written the first page of a new chapter in the history of American space flight.
Bob and Doug dedicated their careers to space flight. What an honor, Raja.
Yeah, it was so cool. I got to actually the honor to work with them as we approached Demo 2, and the Vice President couldn't have said it better. They have set the stage for a whole new era of space flight, and we are seeing it. That we, whether it's the Dragon, the Starliner, they were in on the ground floor doing all that, and exactly like she said, their influence is all over this vehicle, and their the way they worked with SpaceX to help design it, we are all benefiting that. We continue to benefit from it today, and so actually more than a few times in training, like why is it like this? Like, oh, Bob and Doug, like, that makes sense.
How about that?
Yeah. So it was very cool and very well deserved, and the office, NASA, the country is in such a better place because of the work they did.
Well said, Raja. And while we're talking about honors and the office of the president, I want to mention that Raja was nominated by the President of the United States for the appointment to the grade of Air Force Brigadier General. Still needs to be confirmed by the Senate, right?
Yep.
But the Senate, of course, approves all senior civilian and military appointments. But congratulations
Thanks
on getting that nomination.
Yeah, my wife and I are super honored and humbled to be able to continue serving in the next grade. But yeah, we're very honored and special to be able to do that here at NASA.
Oh, very good. I don't have to call you General yet.
Definitely not. Please don't. Yeah.
Okay, Colonel.
Not even that. How about just Raja?
Okay, will do. Let's check in now with Courtney Beasley at the Johnson Space Center for an update in Houston, Texas. Hey, Courtney.
Hey, Daryl. Thanks. As we said earlier, the team here in Mission Control Houston is actively monitoring the International Space Station as they await Dragon's arrival. The crew aboard the station is currently in a sleep period, and they are scheduled to wake up at midnight Central Time. They have completed a number of tasks to prepare the station for Crew-6, like setting up tools to monitor Dragon's arrival and prepping the sleep stations for new residents. Many of their clothes and other belongings launched on a previous cargo resupply mission. Back here in Houston, Flight Director Mike Lammers and his team are in constant communication with the SpaceX mission director for Crew-6's launch to the space station. Once we get to integrated operations, the NASA flight director will be conducting a series of go, no-go polls at the predetermined checkpoints for Dragon's approach. For now, we'll continue to follow along from here in Mission Control Houston, and I'll send it back to the team over at Kennedy. Over to you, Jasmine.
Thanks so much, Courtney. Back at Kennedy here, joining us now is NASA Recovery Director Brian Barry. Thanks for being here.
Of course, thank you.
Of course. So, Brian, we understand that you are the NASA Recovery Director for Crew-5, but you've actually done a lot of things for human spaceflight. Can you tell us more about that?
Sure. Yeah, that's right. So I started my career as a flight controller for the ISS program. My team was responsible for maintenance on the space station. So I had the opportunity to work directly with the astronauts, train them on tools and repair procedures. So that was a lot of fun and something I never thought I would do when I was studying to be an engineer. After that, I moved over to the safety team, and I was our safety rep for the Commercial Crew Program Safety Panel. So that was my first exposure to CCP, and I would go review the hazard reports for Dragon and Starliner. That was a pretty neat experience also because I was able to work with Bob and Doug prior to Demo 2 and just kind of work with them on the hazard reports and get their perspective on the risk and the mission overall. After that, in 2020, I came out to Commercial Crew and I work for them directly now, and I've been doing launch and recovery operations since then. On the launch team, my role is to lead the rescue effort if we need to. If there's a pad emergency egress or a pad abort, the launch rescue director calls in the rescue forces, so that's what I did for Crew-5 launch last year. And then as the recovery director, I lead the NASA portion of the team that goes out on the ship SpaceX, we bring out our flight surgeons and we check out the crew and we load them up on the helicopter and get them back home.
Right, so you've worn a lot of hats for the Commercial Crew program. How did your work as a flight controller in Houston prepare you to be a NASA recovery director?
Well, in Houston, working the ISS operations, you know, you see day in and day out in the control center, you get the full feel of the 6-month mission, so you understand what the crew is going through for that long of a mission. And I think I just kind of bring that crew perspective of the ISS side to the CCP program, and so when it's time to bring the crew home, you know we owe them a smooth and speedy recovery, so that's our priority and our objective.
Right. Brian, it's great that you have that personal relationship with them. What challenges do you and the recovery team have to be prepared for?
Well, the biggest challenge for recovery for Dragon is definitely the weather. We have to find a landing site where the winds are low and the waves are low. So SpaceX has several landing sites around the state of Florida that we can look at and choose the best weather. Beyond that, you know, we start looking at things like contingencies if the crew is injured, and we've got helicopters on standby for a medevac if we need to. And then, you know, there's also just built-in redundancy on the ship and throughout the vehicle. So, but yeah, weather is definitely the biggest challenge for landing.
Right, no, weather is a huge challenge in Florida for a lot of things. And after Crew-5 returns, Brian, you're going to transition to a new role in the Commercial Crew program, Mission Manager for Crew-8. Can you tell us how you're preparing for that?
Sure. So as Mission Manager, it's more of a high-level review.
Just an update. We were doing final inspection.
Crew-8, which launches a year from now. We've already begun those meetings with SpaceX, and so it's pretty exciting to be a part of that early in the mission. And yeah, I'm just honored and proud to do that for the program.
Of course. Well, congratulations, Brian. So glad to have you here tonight.
Thanks, Jasmine.
Daryl, back to you.
All right, thank you very much, Jasmine. And if you're just joining us, we are currently 2 hours and 7 minutes until liftoff of Crew-6, launching as part of NASA's Commercial Crew program. As we just heard so well, Commander Stephen Bowen, pilot Woody Hoburg, and mission specialist Sultan Alneyadi and Andrey Fedyaev are strapped into the seats behind that capsule right there inside Dragon Endeavour. And here's an interesting note about Endeavour. The SpaceX fleet leader in number of flights to and from the station is Endeavour.
That's true, yeah. But
well,
so, yeah,
I was
I got to watch Bob and Doug go in.
That's right.
Yeah, it's cool that we are proving out that you get to reuse these vehicles. It's not just a dream. We're actually doing it.
And they're certified now for 5 flights, which is a human certification that is done in partnership with the Commercial Crew program. The 3 previous flights for this Dragon was, as you mentioned, the historic first flight called Demo 2, then Crew 2, and then Axiom Mission 1, which you were on station, right?
We were,
when
yeah.
Axiom
When
came
Axiom
aboard.
they adopted what's called the Zenith port. So yeah, we were there, which was pretty historic to have the first private astronauts from U.S. soil come up to the space station. It was awesome.
And these astronauts today, Raja, that could happen for them as well if Axiom 2 goes up within their increment, right?
Exactly, yep. And so that's exactly the plan. And Axiom 2 is in training. I think they publicly released the names not too long ago. You can see that online. But yeah, so they do some training at Johnson Space Center, and because exactly that, if they're on orbit on time, they'd be interacting with Crew-6.
We're also going to take some social media questions, and we've been taking them along the way. Raja's been doing a great job answering those. So let's take a question now as the closeout crew gets that hatch closed. Seth Milborn, 99, asks, how does the docking process work?
All right, well, Seth, first off, I like the 99 because I'm a class of 99 grad from the academy, so I was going to throw out a shout to the 99ers out there. But so how does the docking process work? So we have what's called an instantaneous launch window, and the reason is because you're trying to align the orbit that we're going to put the Dragon into with the orbit of the space station. And there's different windows every day, but we choose that so that we're trying to. It's a combination of optimizing the prop you need to use, the propellant, and the timing. So you could go faster to the space station, you could go slower. It depends on the propellant, but we have to build in all these contingencies. So
Dragon. SpaceX, ComCheck over ground station. for TDRS com checks.
And this is what we talked about earlier, Daryl, that there's going to be a series of com checks checking the different connections.
The ground station com check is complete now.
Next will be
TDRS is next.
Next will be TDRS. In the meantime, I'll keep talking until they talk again. So once you're in orbit, then you start in a lower orbit than the space station. And when you're in a lower orbit, generally for mostly circular orbits, you're moving faster relative to the station. So you actually start to catch up to the space station. And then you do a series of what's called phasing burns to slowly boost yourself very close to the space station. And once you get inside what's called the keep out sphere, that's when Houston...
Dragon, SpaceX, com check.
Yes, SpaceX Dragon, have you loud and clear?
Core, loud and clear. TDRS com check complete. Stand by for com checks with DC, MD, and LD in the launch configuration.